Everybody, welcome to the sixth episode of LPodcast'N. This week, another exciting one. Last week we spoke to two STEM students about their experiences, the kind of pressures that are put on to STEM students. We have quite a large gathering of student team members today, which I guess fits with the topic of what we're doing today, because we're going to be talking about well-being and mental health and like the stress of uni and how to overcome that, how to deal with that. And I guess everyone's experiences are different in that sense. So it's great to have 4 student team members on today. Quickly, do you all just want to briefly introduce yourself, what you study? We have 3 familiar faces, voices joining us, and then 1 new student team member. Who wants to go first?
Sure. So I'm Simone. I am a third-year cognitive neuroscience and psychology student here at the university. And I don't know what else to say. That's me.
That's good enough.
Sure. I'll go next. I am Naman, and I'm a 4th-year mechatronic engineering student at the university. And I think this is my first LPN podcast.
Yeah.
Welcome. My name is Salma. I'm a 2nd-year student. I'm studying politics and IR, and that's my quick intro. Okay.
Hi, I'm Rachel. I'm a 1st year of a part-time sociology masters, and I previously studied fashion buying and merchandising as an undergrad as well.
Okay, beautiful. Thank you all. So like I was saying to you all before, the first half, we're gonna speak a little bit about our own experiences at uni and kind of our thoughts on well-being, how we've managed the constant fight between having to do uni work and having to maintain your well-being. So I'll start a little bit about that. So I was at the Uni of Manchester last year doing a history masters, and my kind of like personal experience with well-being and mental health, I was always have been the person that's like, oh, I'm fine, like don't need to speak to anyone, don't need any help, that kind of thing. And then my master's was going well, enjoying it and meeting loads of people, doing loads of stuff, doing well in my assignments and stuff. COVID came, and the transition from like being out all the time, studying at the library every day, to like being confined in my room in like the middle of a pandemic and still having to do uni work was, I would say my level of production went out the window, and kind of found it quite hard to adjust to that. I think in that scenario, it's very easy to say like, oh, I just got lazy or just lost motivation because of the circumstances. But like the reality is obviously a bit more complex than that. Like it's just a struggle mentally to kind of maintain your mental health when you're in the middle of a pandemic, can't leave your house. So it's already a struggle trying to maintain the work that you're doing. And then when you're kind of struggling, like being able to maintain that work to the same level that you were before is like 10 times harder. So that was like fascinating for me. Not fascinating is not the word, but interesting for me to go through, because you kind of become more aware of how fragile and how not set in stone your mental health is at all times. Like it's a constant roller coaster that you're always kind of like trying to figure out, if that makes any sense. But I got through it in the end. graduated with a first, which was great. Um, but going through that and kind of overcoming it, I definitely know now that I would have been able to deal with that scenario, that time of my degree much better if I had like not been the person that was like, I don't need to speak to anyone, I'll be fine, and just like blame myself for being lazy, blame myself for not having the motivation and that kind of thing, rather than like addressing like the forces that are like causing you to feel certain ways. Yeah, so that was kind of a great and interesting experience for me to go through. Is there any one moment in any of your uni lives, careers, where well-being and mental health has been particularly important to you, where the significance of it has stood out to you, and kind of how have you dealt with that?
Yeah, actually, because when COVID started, I actually was pretty good with about just kind of maintaining my kind of motivation. And I kept it going for about a month. I was just working the same as I would be normally, but a month in, I just lost kind of everything. Like it hit me like a pile of bricks. I wouldn't do anything. I wouldn't want to get out of bed or just do anything other than just lay in bed and watch Netflix all day, which, you know, I think a lot of people went through at that time. But in my second year, obviously, it's really important that kind of stay on task. I had a lot of essays and projects to do. And so I found that kind of taking care of myself was really important. So I started exercising every day. I'm not a kind of person that goes on walks. I think it makes me sound like I'm someone's grandma, so I just don't do it. So I just kind of work out at home. I mean, I started doing YouTube videos. I think everyone did at that point. There was like a whole fad about workouts and kind of just seeing your friends in Zoom quizzes and stuff. And I think that really helped kind of bring a bit of normality back in my life. And it kind of did help me get back on track. And I ended up doing pretty well in second year, even though I did kind of lose motivation a month in, but worked out, yeah, I'd say. Just kind of focusing on well-being really, really helped me there.
Yeah, it's definitely something you always kind of need to be aware of and not kind of take for granted.
I was going to say from my personal experience, so going back a couple of years now, my final year was a bit of a wreck for the fashion course because it went really well in the end. But a week before we were about to start final year, so one of my parents was diagnosed with cancer, and luckily they're all fine now, got through really quickly. But it was kind of that just cloud over the whole year, and I sort of have diagnosed mental health conditions as well. So on top of that, and final year, it was bit of a challenge, but I think it really put into perspective, like as much as studying is obviously really important, and it still is important because I've come back from a master's, it really helped me just allow myself to sort of give myself that time and give myself permission for focusing on my well-being. And kind of as a result, I've come back to do a part-time master's purely for sort of my own headspace and to give myself just that bit of extra planning time and organisation time. And I think one of the things that I've learned, and I can't exactly say if it's worked yet because I haven't got any marks back, but at the same time, I think one of the things that's really helped me is not neglecting my studies, but actually prioritising my well-being first. So making sure I have the routine, sort of eating and sleeping as a priority, because I find that I think those two for me have helped sort of my ability to do studying and do research, and also sort of go out and exercise when I can, as much as possible, and kind of actually by focusing on those, whether or not I sort of get a good amount of studying done in a day or not, I still find that ultimately I actually end up stressing less, and I also kind of find that if I do have any sort of ideas during those times, that they do come up and I can actually work a lot more efficiently without having any sort of all-nighters now. So that it's been a massive learning curve, but it's definitely helped. So
yeah, no, that's actually a great point. It's like the stress that you put, the pressure that you put on yourself to like put your work first, like it's like spirals out of control, and then it becomes like this overwhelming thing that like the more you build it up, the more you think like, oh, I need to do this, I can't take like my well-being seriously. the kind of harder it becomes to actually do it.
Definitely, there's actually a lot of psychology research around it, which is what I've been interested in. So go and have a look at that when you got some spare time.
Yeah, we need to get Simone,
Yeah.
the neuroscientist. What are your findings, Simone?
I mean, I wish my project was on this, honestly, but I think, I mean, you've seen it everywhere. There's a lot of research about this stuff and kind of how COVID has impacted it, and kind of everything, really. Mental health is a really big topic and the thing that I study and stuff. So it's good to hear, just kind of what's helping and what's not, really.
Yeah. What about either of you, Salma or Naman?
I just want to say that, Rachel, that's genuinely like inspiring. Like you said, it's definitely a curve. Like you gotta go up and you've gotta go down. And if there was like a point where I needed to take well-being seriously, it was strangely not at the beginning of the first year, but the second semester, because all that excitement of starting something new goes away, and then you actually just sat there and you're like, oh no, this is my life now. I need to deal with it. So I know this is gonna sound so cliche, but get to know yourself during that time, or whatever you're thinking about your mental health, because you have to figure out what you actually like to do, or what are the things that will have a positive impact on you, and not just like what's happening around you, but just what you like to do. So and I also feel like taking a walk makes me a grandma, but when COVID hit, when COVID hit, I kind of forced, like for the first month, I just didn't do anything except stay at home, but kind of force myself to take a walk, even if it's just by yourself. And I know that might be like a little daunting if you're used to like going with someone or something like that. Just take a walk, listen to some music, look at the greenery, come back. That has an actual real change to your mental health. Yeah. What about you, Naman?
I would say mine is slightly different approach, like how most people would, cope up with mental health or something. If I feel like I'm slacking back, or if I don't feel like anything, I kind of like to take some time and, just play a video game or something, just to get that competitive feeling, rejuvenated inside of me. And then it kind of helps me going back to the same work that I didn't really feel like doing now with more enthusiasm, just because I would like to win. And at the same thing comes with, I would like to do this assignment as best as I can. And I think, yeah, definitely throughout, your university life, you do feel there are times when you really don't want to work. And I think it's important at that moment to take a break instead of, just trying to do something which you clearly don't have any motivation of doing. It's important to take some time out, take 5, 10, half an hour, whatever you can, depending on when your deadline is, and then focus on yourself, do what you like to do, be it, taking out walks, or be it to music, or, whatever suits you, and then kind of helps you then get back on track.
Yeah, for sure. It's easy to beat yourself up for thinking that you've not done as well as you can, or not done as much work as you should have done.
Yeah.
What does everyone think of the like the idea that, oh, I'm fine, like I don't need to get mental health support, I don't need to seek out counselling, that kind of thing? Like where do people think that comes from? Why is it an issue? Why is that not the way to think about things?
Personally, I think it might be a bit of a stigma, like a cultural thing, maybe, because the way young people think about mental health may not be how their parents think about it, or how maybe the people around them think about it. So when a lot of people moved home, and then your parents, at least my parents, were like, yeah, you're fine, and I was just sitting there going, I'm not. Like it was just, and then you kind of turn inward, and you turn to kind of different sources, just kind of social media, to the university to support you. And I found that really important, just to kind of destigmatize mental health. And so, for example, I run psychology peer mentoring. So I have to kind of support 400 students this year, and I had to kind of really step back and say, what do I wish I had at this point? And so we started a self-care campaign on social media. It's kind of the small things that, you know, may not necessarily be going to a counselor or going to, you know, getting full-fledged support, but kind of taking care of yourself the small ways, and, you know, signposting along the rest.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. And sorry, I've gone blank. What was the question again? Just shows you, doesn't it?
Just the idea of being fine. You don't need to get counselling support. You don't need to like think about your mental health because you're just generally fine.
Yeah, so going back to that, yeah, I think it's one of those things that I think you get a lot of people tend to get imposter syndrome even with sort of well-being, and I think everyone really compares themselves to each other's situations. And I think even me giving my example before, it's difficult because I think a lot of people often think they have to have something like death or something extreme to be happening in their life, and actually that's not the case. And to be honest with you, like when I first sort of actually decided to reach out to the counselling service and other services at the university, I was kind of just asking about a general worry that was happening. And then through that, over sort of about 4 or 5 years, I actually realised how eligible I was for support through the disability service as well. And I think it is really difficult. I think we shouldn't underestimate how challenging it can be to sort of judge ourselves in that. Yes, you sort of might be feeling kind of small worries, or worries that you think are small, but actually even if they are common, or even if other people are sort of putting up with it, it doesn't necessarily mean that you shouldn't go and seek support. And I think even if you find, like, there's definitely a thing of trying to find the right support, and actually by just making a simple step and sort of communicating to somebody about it, and whether or not you get the right support in the first place, I think just making that step to sort of at least trying to find something is really helpful for you.
I definitely agree to that, and I was just thinking of like the imposter system syndrome, the imposter syndrome, as you said. Like, I did honestly think that I should leave those services to those who really need it. Like that was the mentality that I was in as well. And even if you're just stressed, I should also talk about what Jacob wanted to say. Even if you were just stressed because of COVID, you can access support, and that is a mitigating circumstance, and you can look through that. And maybe I should also expand on what Jacob wanted to say, because one of our members was talking to us about the podcast that we're doing right now, and he was saying that his experience was different because there were a lot of applications that go to the mental services, and they get rejected very quickly. And he emphasized that you need to reach out as much as possible, like email and things like that. He talked about the fact that like reaching out to his personal tutor wasn't the best experience. So he did more than that, and there was so much frustration. So he talked to the mental health services. I am messing up, but the mental health services, and was able to get help through that. So it's easy to feel discouraged, and there is a reputation that students will not find the services to be helpful, but you need to know that they're there, and you need to know that you can access them. Or if everyone thought that they shouldn't get it, then no one will get it. So do as much as you can to prioritize yourself and to help yourself through that. Okay. Yeah.
No, that's a great point, Salma. Like there's services in the uni specifically to help you. Actually, I guess we should speak a little bit about that. I'm like personally, I was only there at the Uni of Manchester for a year and never had any interaction with the kind of counselling services. From anyone's experiences or just knowledge of those services, what is it like? How accessible are they? what are the steps that you need to go through?
I actually accessed the service when it was still, face to face. I think it
Yeah.
started off just me being, overwhelmed by my project, which, in third year was an individual one. And I just feel very anxious coming with deadlines, so many things happening around. And then me taking on additional responsibilities outside uni. I wasn't sure how I'll cope up. So just, some anxiety issues that I had. And I thought, it's better just to talk about it with someone instead of, just keeping it to myself, and it's not helping even if I don't reach out to someone who might be able to help me. So in terms of accessing them, it was quite easy. I think I just went into their office, which was in Crawford building, and they just told me you need to fill out an online form, and then they'll schedule an appointment where you come in 15 minutes early. They ask you to fill a questionnaire, and then you can seek out a counselor who will just talk you through it. So I think pre-COVID it was this process, but I'm not sure how that has changed. Maybe one of my fellow colleagues who might have used their services recently will be able to shed some light.
Yeah, I mean, I'm the same as you, Amanda. I've kind of used it in the past when it was face to face. So I'm not actually sure personally, but I think if you do go on their website, I think they obviously have all the steps of how they're sort of doing it via telephone, or sort of how they're triaging it now. I think it's still fairly accessible. I think it's just important to obviously make sure you read the information correctly, and obviously just get in touch with people within the counselling service if there's any sort of issues or problems. So yeah.
What from both of your experiences, has there because I guess from my perspective, if I was going to the counselling service, not like overtly, but like one of my like subconscious fears would be that there's going to be like some sort of judgment that like my issues aren't big enough, or that like it might not go swimmingly well, might not be the friendliest like scenario. Like how is that, is it like a positive experience overall?
So for me, it was kind of varied because of some of the support I could receive and obviously couldn't, because obviously there's only certain support that they can give. But I think overall, it's for what they were able to give, it was really positive. So the first time I went was, I think, must have been about 4 years ago now. And it was, for me, it was kind of very much sort of underlying but constant worries. And they were able to give me a couple to a few sessions of basic cognitive behavioural therapy, which was, for me, it's not quite what I use at the moment anymore, but it was definitely a really good stepping stone to actually get to where I needed to be. And they also recommended some groups, which was again not sort of relevant to me now, but another really good stepping stone to sort of get to know myself, and sort of just sort of everyday management techniques. And again, sort of when I returned later, I think the one thing that they were, as much as obviously they couldn't support me with a lot of the sort of deeper rooted counselling techniques and other sort of support like that, they were able to at least sort of, be upfront with me about it and tell me directly, but also just, make sure I was safe, make sure I was sort of on the right path, and just sort of where else I could seek out help if I needed to.
Yeah. I guess one of those things that once you do for the first time, like the second time just becomes so much more easier and less overwhelming in terms of like how big of a deal like you think it is.
Definitely, yeah. I think it's just it's again not to underestimate how big that sort of barrier, and sort of don't judge yourself on how big that barrier in actually making that first step, because it's a massive thing to do. And I think it's once you do it, great, but just take it easy when you do it, because it is a huge thing. So
Yeah, I think similar to what Rachel said, they did signpost me to quite a few useful things. Then I think ultimately it comes down to what you find useful for yourself. It might not be that everything they suggest will be useful, So I think some of the, the daily things that they taught in some of the sessions were quite useful. But I think overall it was at least, a good experience in myself, that I feel like I tried to, at least talk to someone about it. If I was having, anxiety, it was nice to see that people were, very welcoming, did not judge me or anything, based on that. And I think it was also nice to see, in some of the sessions, that there are other students who might be going through, similar issues themselves.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Yeah, I do agree with that. I just want to add really quickly, just slip it in there, that one of the things that could comfort, had comforted me and can comfort anyone, is that you should let like the professional decide if your issue is big or small, because sometimes you can think to yourself that, oh, I'm just a little stressed, or you should wonder if it's an indicator for something else, like, are you having anxiety attacks? Are you having panic attacks? Do you want to have a more meaningful day? Do you want to feel overall happier? Things like that. So it's just let the professional decide,
Mm. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. We'll finish up by I want to quickly touch on like external things, kind of like the everyday things that people do to kind of just get through uni, the stress of uni, get through mental health challenges. Is there anything that anyone's implemented in like their everyday life, like similar to what Rachel was talking about, that has helped them, like whether it be like an app or a website or a technique that's helped them a lot?
One thing I really, like I mentioned earlier as well about the exercise, and something I also do is I stop kind of working on uni work at 5. So it's like a basically a full-time job. So from 9 to 5 I'll work, and then after that it's just my time to do whatever I want.
Yeah.
Also, another thing we started doing in my student house when I was back in Manchester is started doing dress up Sundays, because we couldn't go anywhere, we couldn't do anything, and we wanted to kind of have a nice time with each other. So I think I would recommend that as well. If you're interested, you want to get a group of friends together, just kind of have a good time. We had American night, we had kind of chick flicks night, kind of whatever comes to your mind, you can just do it, honestly, and whatever kind of gets you through it is worth doing. So
Yeah. I mean, that's a great point. I think with working from home, it's like an even bigger issue of just like separating work from like just like being at home.
definitely, yeah.
Yeah, I was going to say, I second that as well. I think it's, even if you're not doing 9 to 5, just sort of find that, constant routine, as Simone said before, with sort of, and have the boundaries for working hours. I think it's really helpful. And I'm always, as cliche as it is, I'm quite biased towards yoga, because I've qualified as a teacher for it as well.
Yes.
And sort of since learning a lot of the principles of yoga, honestly, it's one of those things that I even just do it for 20 to 30 minutes as soon as I get up, and make sure it's done and dusted for the day. And if I want to do more, then that's great. But yeah, and within that, I think a lot of breathing techniques are really helpful for sort of just reducing anxiety as well. So that's one of mine.
Yeah, that's a great point. That's a great point, actually. So I've been meaning to start yoga for like the last 3 months now.
I was the same when I started.
Yeah. So I read a book called Inner Engineering, I think.
Interesting.
By some famous Indian yogi or something like that. And ever since then, I've been like, I need to start yoga.
Plenty of time.
Yeah. Okay, well, thank you all for coming along and speaking a little bit about your experiences and the counselling service and the kind of support that students can get. So thank you very much, Salma, Rachel, Simone, and Naman.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We had so much fun. Yeah.
See you guys.
See you.